DeMar DeRozan hits the game winner with 4 seconds left. He goes up into a mid-ranger against City Sissoko to take a 1 point lead with about 4 seconds remaining. Denny Avdia throws up a hopeless shot. It's way off, and the Kings come out of Portland with one of the craziest comeback wins of all time in franchise history. Down, what was it, like 15 points with under 2 minutes remaining, 10 points with a minute to go, down six in overtime with like 30 seconds to go, and the Kings come out with the victory. At least that's what should have happened if Mark Davis didn't call an insane foul. That's what it seemed like happened for quite a while. I mean, I got into my car right as this final possession was unfolding, putting on the radio, listening to G-Man describe what was happening at the end of this game. And it was DeMar DeRozan knocking down that shot. Then I'm hearing that Denny Avdia threw up a prayer and missed it, and that the Kings won. And as G-Man's saying the Kings win, I'm hearing this whistle in the background. I'm hearing multiple whistles. And then I'm hearing an announcement that a player has been disqualified. I'm like, what is happening? And then G-Man finally is like, wait, there's been a foul called. And, I didn't really understand what type of foul this was as I was listening to the radio broadcast, because I mean, I think G-Man was kind of like, oh wow, they can't believe they called that. I can't believe that happened. But I didn't really understand that it was such a horrendous call until I get home and I watched that replay. That was absolutely incredible that Mark Davis would call that foul from where he was on the court, but it wasn't even the first time that he did it all game. Late in the fourth, he actually called the foul where Russell Westbrook went to the rim, and he went up and didn't get a foul call by the baseline referee. The ball went out of bounds, and it was just an out of bounds call. And then Mark Davis, way after the play had already been called, he's calling a foul from way like at half court. And so it wasn't the first time that Mark Davis had done this in this game. It wasn't the first time within like 6 or 7 minutes of game action. Him just making a call from a bad position on the court way after the play had already happened, just because a player is complaining or whatever. And, it's a shame. And the only explanation that I have for why he gave that call is that the NBA sees that the Kings need the best lottery odds. He's just trying to help us out. And that's the only thing saving my mental health right now, is that this is a season where the Kings aren't necessarily trying to win every game, and that the results aren't really what matters. But still, taking away what could have been an all-time great Sacramento Kings comeback, it's one of those comebacks that you look back on and it's like, it doesn't matter what season it really happened in. It doesn't matter if the team was horrible. You just look back at one of those games as one of the all-time great Kings games, where it's like a miraculous comeback. DeMar DeRozan going crazy. I think he had like 22 points in the last 6 or 7 minutes of game action. Him going absolutely insane and then hitting a game-winning shot, which should have been the game-winning shot. And it would have been the type of game that you look back on for years and years and years. And so, yes, the results for the Kings this season don't necessarily matter. And in terms of the lottery position, you want to be losing games like this. So some people are going to view it as a win, and some people are going to be happy that that foul got called, because people don't care about the results and they more care about the process and watching young guys play and watching Maxime Raynaud get a career high and Dylan Cardwell get minutes and Keon Ellis get minutes, and that's all great. But this is still an all-time robbery. Russell Westbrook, I mean, it's Kings tradition to foul someone with your face, and this one was extra hilarious because he fouled the ball with his face. It's not even like he made contact with a guy's elbow or something. I don't think there was contact to the elbow with his face. I'm pretty sure it was just the ball. And hitting someone in the face with the ball is a foul on the offensive player. Like, you can't do that. I've seen that called a foul before. And so for Russell Westbrook to get called for a foul there is absolutely insane. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Sometimes the refs make calls like that, and it sucks when a call like that decides a game. And that was Doug Christie's comments after the game. He's like, for game, for game. Really, you're going to make that call for the game. And he didn't say he didn't say anything other than for game because he didn't want to get fined. But that's absolutely right. To make that call with the game on the line is insane. I think this is the first game all season where I'm just complaining about the officials for the first few minutes of getting on here and talking about a game because I really haven't had any problems with the officials this season. And that mainly has to do with the Kings just being bad. So there aren't as many close games where I feel like they should have won but didn't because of officiating. So I haven't been, very mad with the officials this season because I'm just mad at how bad the Kings are. But here we are. Finally, we get one because I did think it was a pretty solid effort from the Kings. Obviously, the comeback, but I think there are plenty of things to like from this game. There were rotations that I've been asking for, or guys playing that I've been asking for. I've wanted to see Dylan Cardwell with Sabonis and Eubanks out. I didn't think we would necessarily get to see him because he's been playing a bunch in the G League. I thought he would just stay there. And Precious Achiuwa has been playing so great as the backup big, but against this Portland Trailblazers team with Donovan Clingan, where offensive rebounding is a big strength of theirs, and that was evident throughout the game. The Kings struggled on the defensive glass. We got to see Dylan Cardwell get a lot of game time, and that was fun. Precious Achiuwa started at the 4 and didn't play all that well. So it was a lot of Dylan Cardwell, and it was all Maxime Raynaud and Dylan Cardwell at the center position, and that was very fun. They both played extremely well. On top of that, you got a bunch of Keon Ellis minutes, and he was playing in the closing lineup, and he played extremely well despite not being able to hit a 3. He definitely struggled with physicality at times, but that's just who he is as a player. We know that. We know he's not a perfect player, but he generated so much with his steals, getting out in transition, his scoring in transition, even sometimes his passing, although sometimes it was a little bit off, and there were a couple turnovers or almost turnovers. But he created a lot through his activity defensively and pushing, so it was good to see that. Keegan Murray with 17 points, along with 6 steals plus blocks. Nick Clifford playing 20 minutes, and Malik Monk getting a DNP. Monk getting a DNP is interesting, but at the same time, I've been asking for more Keon Ellis minutes, more Nick Clifford minutes. That has to come at the cost of somebody, and it was at the cost of Malik Monk. And do I want it to necessarily be at the cost of Malik Monk? No, but that's just the way that this roster is constructed. If we want Keon and Nick Clifford to be getting minutes, somebody's got to get benched, and it is odd that he just got a complete DNP when he's been one of the better Kings players this season. But I also think you look at Dennis Schroeder coming off the bench, and if you're going to pick between Schroeder and Monk, I think Schroeder's pretty clearly the better player there. That's not to say that Malik Monk maybe doesn't even have a better peak potential at times, but Dennis Schroeder's been more consistently a driving force of the offense for the Kings and had another solid game. So a Monk DNP, while very odd, I mean, if it's what's going to get Neek and Keon minutes, then it's kind of what has to be done. Games like this, especially overtime games, are always so weird. I love how the Kings are saving their overtime games for games where I'm not able to watch the game until like 10:30 at night. So thanks for that, guys. But games like this are kind of weird because it's like everything happened in the last 7-8 minutes of the game. Right? Is there even a point to talk about the first 3 quarters, the first 3.5 quarters of this game? Of course there is, but it's like I want to start at the end, and so that's what I'll do here. I'll start with the Kings being down 15 with under 2 minutes to go. And I think where the Kings' run started is it started with Keegan blocking Shaedon Sharpe at the rim. One of Keegan's 4 blocks on the game. Then Keon Ellis getting fouled on a 3-pointer by, I believe it was Shaedon Sharpe, and knocking down all 3 free throws. That was the start, but obviously there was a lot more that had to happen for the Kings to be able to come back. I thought when the Kings, last season, I think it was like an 18-point lead with 8 minutes to go that they blew. I thought that was bad. Being up 15 with under 2 minutes to go and not winning the game, not winning the game in regulation, and they probably shouldn't have won the game, period, is insane. But the Kings then were down 10 with about a minute to go. DeMar hits a corner 3. Then Shaedon Sharpe, with just horrible decision making, taking a tough mid-range jumper over a defender with over half of the shot clock to go. But we'll take it. And DeMar draws a foul in transition, pushing it the other way. It's one of those moments where, I mean, the game was over if he takes a shot clock violation, practically. There's really not much the Kings could have done if he just takes a shot clock violation. I kind of say that, like, obviously no one's going to actually take a shot clock violation in that point of the game, but it's one of those moments where you just have to be smarter, where everyone has to understand you can't commit to an offensive rebound, and you have to really make sure you are either taking a wide open shot or you are running the clock all the way down before you take a shot. Shaedon Sharpe with some awful decision making, and DeMar takes advantage by drawing a foul on the other end in transition. The Kings then foul Shaedon Sharpe. He misses both free throws. Russell Westbrook goes all the way down in transition on the other end, gets the layup. Kings within 3. Avdia then can't catch an inbounds. It goes out of bounds. Westbrook gets fouled intentionally. He makes both free throws. Avdia gets fouled, misses the second, and the ball goes off of Maxime Raynaud as Raynaud and Westbrook both try to get the rebound. That's one of the craziest parts of this game to me. As someone who was watching the game, knowing what happened, right? I know this game goes to overtime. I know the Kings make an incredible comeback, but I don't necessarily know how it happens as I'm watching it after the fact. It's insane. That play was insane to me because it felt like the Kings had to be perfect to pull off this type of comeback, and they weren't. And there were multiple moments in that fourth quarter where I kept going, this has to be where the comeback starts, right? And it never was. It really never was. There were so many times where it felt like, okay, the Kings got to be perfect from here on out, and then the Blazers would knock down a 3. Or in this case, the Kings can't secure a defensive rebound on a free throw. And somehow they were still able to make this comeback happen, despite not being perfect. They were able to foul Donovan Clingan. That was a big storyline, was Clingan's free throw shooting. He only made 1. Then on the Kings' final play of regulation, the ball, they try to inbound to Keegan Murray. It kind of bounces, fortunately, to DeMar. He pump fakes, gets the flyby, hits the corner 3. Then on the other end, Jeremy Grant misses the winner. And that's where, DeMar, he just started carrying the team down the stretch with his clutch shot making. Every season, he's good for a few of these games where he just goes absolutely bonkers and he just starts knocking down 3 after 3 after 3 to pull the team back into a game. But the Kings pretty much put it all on the line at the end of regulation, and then at the start of OT, the Blazers kind of jumped them. They got out to a quick 5-point lead. Jeremy Grant hit a 3. Keon Ellis had a bad turnover in transition. Chris Murray had a great offensive rebound going after Keon Ellis, and then kind of pushing him all the way under the rim, grabbing the rebound. Keegan fouled Chris for that and 1, and the Kings went down 6, and the offense wasn't looking great. It was really only like a Maxime Raynaud tip-in. That was the Kings' offense. But then DeMar was able to get an and 1. Again, he's kind of taking over the offense here. But the Kings were down 6 with under 30 seconds to go. DeMar hits a tough 3. Keegan gets a steal. DeMar gets fouled, hits both free throws. And then the Kings, one of the things that could have been and should have been very important was they didn't let the Blazers ever inbound the ball easily. They were forcing them to take the timeouts, both in the fourth quarter and in overtime. So the Blazers not having timeouts, that should have been a big deal. Obviously it wasn't because the Blazers still won. But Clingan missed both. DeMar comes down, works his way into the mid-range against City Sissoko, Kings legend City Sissoko, and hits him with a beautiful move in the mid-range and knocks down the midi. And then obviously Avdia comes the other way, punches Westbrook in the face with the ball and gets a foul call and wins the game on free throws with like a little over 4 seconds to go. What's insane to me is how the officials can go to the monitor. And this is something that I've thought for a long time, right? This didn't just come to me from this game, where the referees will go to the monitor to review if the foul happened before the expiration of the game clock. It's always so funny to me because it's like, there was no foul. So how can you say that? I think it was like 1.5 seconds. They were like, the foul occurred with 1.5 seconds on the game clock. It's like, you went to the monitor and determined that a foul happened with 1.5 seconds? I would love for them to show me where because how can you determine that a foul happened with 1.5 seconds if a foul never occurred? And so it's just like where we thought the foul happened, but it didn't actually happen was at 1.5 seconds. And that's why it's so stupid how you're going to the monitor anyways. So what's the point? Like, just, it's so frustrating. What's the point of going to the monitor if you're just not even allowed to determine whether you absolutely got the call horrendously wrong? So despite the great efforts of DeMar DeRozan down the stretch, Kings come away with a 1-point loss, 134-133. Obviously a very high-scoring game here, but overtime was especially high-scoring. 19 points to 18 was what the overtime period ended at. We can go through the rest of the game pretty quickly, and then I'll get to individuals, which is kind of the more interesting talking point. But the Kings started this game with Precious Achiuwa in the starting lineup. So going a bit bigger, and I was interested to see exactly what the Kings were going to do defensively against the Blazers, because you only have one Keegan Murray, and they have Shaedon Sharpe, Jeremy Grant, Deni Avdija. So who do you put Keegan on? Because Avdija is their best player, but the Kings kind of need Keegan to be able to guard either the size of Jeremy Grant or just the athleticism of Shaedon Sharpe. So putting Precious Achiuwa into that lineup gives the lineup more defensive versatility, more size, which the Kings desperately needed because they only have like one guy usually who can guard three of the wings/forwards of the Blazers. And so Keegan being able to guard Deni Avdija definitely slowed Avdija down early on, but still no one there to guard Shaedon Sharpe, and he got hot, very hot early on. It was Keegan Murray versus Shaedon Sharpe in the first quarter offensively. I think Keegan had 11 and Sharpe had 15 points. I liked Keegan's aggressiveness, getting into the paint, 3 for 3 early on, all of them in the paint. But Shaedon Sharpe was on fire, shooting the jumpers, hitting threes. I think he started the game 8 for 9, and the Blazers as a whole started the game 8 for 16 from the three-point line. So something that we've seen a lot this season. Teams love shooting the three against the Kings early in games. For some reason, late in games, they don't necessarily like making threes against the Kings, or in the next 3 quarters after the first quarter. But in the first quarter, teams love shooting the three against the Kings. They couldn't defend the three-point line, and they also couldn't rebound the basketball. Donovan Clingan was a force on the offensive glass. 17 offensive rebounds for the Portland Trail Blazers. Clingan had 5 of those. On the other end, the Kings did respond with 11 of their own, and Maxime Raynaud had 4 offensive rebounds. Dylan Cardwell had 3 offensive rebounds, so not bad, kind of trying to punch back there, but the rebounding was definitely a problem. I was just very interested with the rotations that the Kings were going with. It was a very fast-paced, back-and-forth affair in that first quarter, and then when the Kings went to the bench lineup, it was Dennis Schroeder, Keon Ellis, Nick Clifford, Dario Saric, and Dylan Cardwell. So Dylan Cardwell and Dario Saric getting into the game, and Keon Ellis getting into the game for that matter. That's all surprising. And it was especially surprising that it was both Saric and Cardwell. I wouldn't have necessarily been surprised if it was one of them, because I thought at some point Dylan Cardwell would get some run with the center minutes, the way that they are, the injuries, the way that they are, and Dylan Cardwell playing very well in the G League, and he showed a lot in Summer League and in preseason especially, and in some of his early minutes this season, so not necessarily surprising. But then throwing Dario Saric also in there, just kind of funny and random. I like the way that Dennis Schroeder operated the offense with that bench unit. He was creating opportunities for Dylan Cardwell inside, and Cardwell was finishing them. And that's what impressed me about Cardwell, was it wasn't just the defensive end, because he was doing a lot defensively, getting blocks, guarding the perimeter at times, rebounding the basketball, but he was also finishing his opportunities on the offensive end. The bench, I thought, did a better job of rebounding the basketball, at least at the start of the first quarter, even with that small lineup. At other times in the game, they definitely struggled, but in the first quarter, the lineup with Schroeder, Keon, and Neek was rebounding well. But those are 3 guards that aren't very good at rebounding the basketball. I hope that Neek gets better at rebounding the basketball, but right now, the rebounding can be tough with that unit. So Dylan Cardwell was kind of holding it down, at least for the time being. And that bench unit was playing with pace, and they were able to get a lead going into the second quarter. Dennis Schroeder, I've said it since he's moved to the bench. I keep saying it. He has been really, really good. Really, really good offensively. Everything was running through him on the offensive end, both scoring and creating. To start the second quarter, he hit a mid-range jumper that put the Kings up 8, which I think was the Kings' biggest lead of the game. Nick Clifford with that bench unit also had a couple of buckets coming around screens. So I like to see that, him operating with the ball in his hands, coming around these screens, being able to snake them, put his guy in jail a little bit, hit a floater, hit a mid-ranger, looking more comfortable creating for himself off of the dribble. But with the Kings building that 8-point lead, then Donovan Clingan came back into the game, rebounding became more of a problem again. And the Blazers kind of slowly worked their way back into the game after it was an offensive blitz from both teams. 40-36 in that first quarter. Things slowed down a lot in that second quarter. It became more of a grind, a lot more fouls, and a lot more focus on the rebounding, I thought, because neither team shot all that well in the second quarter. But it was the Blazers getting more of those second chance opportunities that got them a 6-point advantage in the quarter, 27, or a 7-point advantage, sorry, 27-20, and got them that lead going into halftime. It was a bit back and forth, but then there were a couple plays from the Kings on the defensive end that let the Blazers really get the advantage. One of them was where they gave up an offensive rebound, and we're practically playing 5-on-4 because I think it was Jeremy Grant who just fell down after he took a shot and didn't get up. And the Kings still somehow left Shaedon Sharpe wide open, the guy who had been on fire. He had 17 points, was 7 for 8 from the field, and they left him wide open even though they had a man advantage. And Sharpe knocks that down, gets up to 20 points on the half. So it just felt like a bit of a slow, disjointed quarter for the Kings, and they were dominated on the glass. And honestly, to get stops, a lot of it had to come through steals. And Keon did that very well. He was getting out and he was leading the break. He had 6 steals. 6 steals. that is pretty insane. And that's where he generates a lot of his offense because he wasn't knocking down the 3. The 3-point shot, the catch and shoot 3-point shot, is pretty much most of what he's going to do in the half court offense. A lot of his other offense comes in his ability to get steals, his active hands, and then running in transition. He found himself with the ball out on the fast break a lot. And that leads to a lot of decision making, and his decision making is not the best a lot of times in transition, but he got the job done enough, whether that was scoring or creating for others. I do think his passing and decision making needs to be better in transition, but he creates so many of those advantaged opportunities. But the Kings were down 3 going into the third quarter. At the start of the third quarter, the Kings went on a bit of a run led by Keegan's dominating defense, especially at the rim, and then Russell Westbrook running the offense. Russ had an interesting game. At times he was really good, at times he was really bad, but I think that kind of is just the way Russ is. That's what we see a lot. And the start of the third quarter was one of those moments where he was very good running the offense, being able to create for others and himself. There were a couple technicals early in that quarter on DeMar DeRozan and Donovan Clingan. It was back and forth. Blazers would take the lead, Kings would take the lead, Blazers took the lead back. But I thought the Kings were playing with great energy, even though at times the Blazers would take the lead and eventually, I was going to say, took the lead in the fourth quarter. That's actually not true. The Kings were actually up 1 after that third quarter. But there were some great energy plays like DeMar scoring on Clingan with a nice fake, but then getting down on the defensive end, down and dirty, and taking a charge on Clingan. And that takes some bravery to take a charge on a guy as big as Donovan Clingan. And then you had Dylan Cardwell, had a big chase down block, then locked up Shaedon Sharpe on the perimeter, was able to move his feet, get a block, force a shot clock violation. When the bench came in, it was rough rebounding the basketball with those 3 guards that I talked about earlier, plus Dario Saric. And Dylan Cardwell, he's a force on the glass, but he definitely cannot do it alone, especially against a guy like Donovan Clingan. But it wasn't even just against Donovan Clingan. When Clingan was out, it was also a bit of a problem. But Cardwell, I thought, was one of the most impressive players during that third quarter. Outside of some of the rebounding struggles, because it definitely was a struggle to get a rebound, I thought the Kings were defending well. There was a play where Nick Clifford was able to just body up against Deni Avdija and force a miss. And I think that's really impressive because Avdija is a strong player. He's very good at bumping you and drawing fouls, as we saw at the end of the game. He has one of the best whistles in the entire NBA. But Neek was able to hold his own. And there were a few plays defensively from Neek that I loved in that third quarter where he was able to stop Abdia. There was another one where Dylan Cardwell was out guarding on the perimeter, so the Kings had to send a double. And Neek Clifford, with a heads up play, just knowing that he has to be quick on the rotation into the paint, and he's able to knock a pass away that would have led to an easy layup or dunk and got the Kings to reset their defense. So some really nice plays from Neek. And then we also got a Keon Ellis to Neek Clifford alley-oop pushing off of a made bucket. So I just love the pace and effort that group was playing with. In the fourth quarter, Denny Avdia's physicality was a problem. The Kings were able to keep him quiet for the first portion of this game, but he exploded in that second half. Kings struggled to finish at the rim over length. Dennis Schroeder was getting really frustrated on both ends with the calls. I think that he wasn't getting, and Doug Christie even challenged one and then lost the challenge. But Donovan Clingan hit a three to go up 9, and I felt like Mark Jones didn't realize that Donovan Clingan can shoot the three because he was like, Clingan throws up a prayer, and there were multiple other times where he was just like, "Whoa, Clingan's shooting a three." It's like, yeah, he may not be the best shooter, but he shoots threes. So he hit a three to go up 9. In the game, while Portland had a nice little lead, it by no means was out of reach for the Kings. And so there's just a really odd play where Westbrook didn't get it. He went after an offensive rebound, didn't get it, then pretty much tries to intentionally foul Kamara. And the refs somehow miss it, adding on to what a terrible game the refs had. The ref somehow missed Russell Westbrook blatantly holding Kamara's arm, and the ref wants to take this foul, so then he just goes and trucks him. It was so odd because I don't know what could have possibly triggered that. He just didn't get an offensive rebound, and this game was by no means out of reach. So that was a weird play from Russ, and he got a flagrant for it. Kamara then immediately got a flagrant after that with an elbow, but Portland went on to knock down a couple of threes, go up 18 with 5 minutes remaining. And Russ, I mean, there was just a bunch of weird Russ plays. That one, then going into an ISO where he just dribbled the ball forever and then threw up a bad shot. The next possession missed a layup badly, but then was cherry picking because he didn't get back on defense, so then got an easy layup. I didn't like what Russ was doing, and it felt like kind of out of nowhere that he just was frustrated with the game. But then he got back to creating for Maxime in the pick and roll, and Max started to get some easy buckets. And once Russ got back to being more of a playmaker than trying to go ISO ball, it resulted in much better looks for the Kings. Toumani Camara then fouled out, and that's when we get to the Kings being down 15 with under 2 minutes remaining, and the rest is history, like we talked about earlier. There was a lot to like from this game despite how it ended, and despite how at times the first half of the fourth quarter went, and obviously the Kings putting themselves in a position to be down that much with very little time remaining and having to make that comeback, but being able to fight back and then obviously getting hosed by the refs. I mean, it was a good effort. You had 33 points from DeMar DeRozan, with most of those coming in the final couple minutes of the fourth quarter and overtime. 10 for 16 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, 10 for 10 from the free throw line, which was clutch. The Kings went a combined 31 for 34 from the free throw line. The Blazers were 21 for 33. That was a very big story in this one. The minutes were all over the place. Precious getting the start, playing 14 minutes and not playing well. He could not finish a basket inside to save his life. And that's what got him benched in the fourth quarter. I think it's a curse with guys like Drew Eubanks moving into the starting lineup, Precious Achiuwa moving into the starting lineup. Even at times when Russ first moved into the starting lineup, he struggled. Like, just don't even move guys into the starting lineup anymore. We should move Keegan to the bench. Max seems to be the only one that's really thriving in the starting lineup consistently. Let's move Keegan to the bench, and I bet he starts making his threes again. But, I mean, with some of these guys like Precious Achiuwa, I mean, I do think moving into a new role, like being a starter, he's going up against another team's starters. It's a new role that he has to adapt to, and so there's something to that where he's now playing the 4, he's not playing the 5 anymore, he's playing with a different group of guys, and so he struggles a little bit more. Keegan had a hot start to the game, 11 points in the first quarter, only scored 6 the rest of the way, but we'll definitely take 17 points, 8 for 17 from the field, along with the 4 blocks and 2 steals. If he can chip in 17 points or 16 points a night, I mean, that's really all I care about for him. At times, maybe I want him to try to be the leading scorer and go get you 20 plus, but in reality, the place he's going to end up in his career where he's going to have the most success is when he's being asked to score 14 to 16 points per game and then get 4 blocks and 2 steals like he has been. Since he's made his season debut, they showed on the broadcast, he's second in the league in blocks behind Jay Huff in that span. He just owns the rim, and so, the Kings need a shot blocker. Well, I mean, they got one in Keegan Murray. Maxime Raynaud with another career high. He just continues to set these career highs in points. 29 points, 10 for 20 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, 8 for 9 from the free throw line, 11 rebounds in there as well. I liked early on when at first he catches the ball, Donovan Clingan's sitting off of him. He could have taken a 3, he didn't. But then a couple plays later, then Donovan Clingan's sagging again. This time he pulls the 3 and he knocks it down. And what does he do? Pretty much the play after that, he catches the ball in the corner. This time Clingan is closing out because he's like, okay, this guy can knock down a 3. And Raynaud drives right by him and gets the N1. That's why I like Maxime taking some of these 3s, because once he knocked that first one down, he got a little bit more respect from Clingan. Then he started to put the ball on the ground. I think for a lot of players, I like when they work inside out, but also for a guy like Max, most of his stuff is going to be inside anyways, so I'm fine with him just stepping out and taking a couple of 3s early on to kind of set the tone and tell the defense, like, yo, you better get out on me, and that kind of opens up the game for himself, especially if he knocks it down. But he just has great touch around the rim, finds himself in really great positions to be able to knock down these shots, and he has that great relationship with Russell Westbrook. And looks like someone who's on track to make an all-rookie team, especially if he keeps getting starting reps like he is right now. 37 minutes, also a lot of minutes for him. He has been starting recently with Sabonis out, but he hasn't been getting 37 minutes, and I know it was an overtime game, so that obviously helps. But he hasn't been playing that many minutes, and so he just keeps working up and gaining more and more trust with that coaching staff. Russ had 20 points, 10 assists, had times where he was absolutely running the offense, and it was great getting out in transition and scoring at the rim early on, and was setting up Max for these easy looks. He had some frustrating portions of the game and confusing portions, but for the most part, it was a positive game from Russ. Then off the bench, this is where things get really weird rotation-wise. It was Keon Ellis with 32 minutes, and he was closing the game. Had 10 points, 6 steals, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 turnovers, because he was getting out in transition and throwing some bad passes. 1 for 6 from 3, but 3 for 9 from the field with those 10 points. So the box score is kind of all over the place. If you just look at the box score, like, I feel like you would have no idea how to judge this Keon Ellis game. But I think the fact that he gets 32 minutes shows that he had the trust of the coaching staff in this game, and he was playing well enough to be in this game late. And I mean, I absolutely think that was the right decision, because he was playing well, and he was playing really well in the defensive end and creating a lot of the fast break opportunities that the Kings need to score. And that's what I've talked about a lot with him, where at times I think he's a little overrated defensively of what he can do, especially one-on-one. But I think it's more what he creates offensively from his defense that the Kings really need. This is a Kings team that, as I've talked about a million times, is not good in the half court. And so the fact that that's the part that makes it so confusing why Keon hasn't gotten more minutes, is because Keon is someone who is going to get you those fast break opportunities. And that's exactly how the Kings need to play. And that's what we saw, him getting those 6 steals. He's a defensive playmaker. He's not always the most sound defensively, but he's a defensive playmaker, and he created a bunch of opportunities. Dennis Schroeder had 22 minutes, 6 points, 6 assists. I liked the way he was operating the offense, a lot of it running through him, yet he only took 6 shot attempts. And so he doesn't necessarily need to shoot a bunch, but he was still operating the offense well. Neat Clifford, 20 minutes, 8 points, 3 for 6 from the field, had some really nice looks getting into that mid-range, and had some good plays on the defensive end as well, which is something that we haven't really seen. I haven't seen his ability to impact the game in other ways when he's not scoring. So it was good to see him make some of those defensive plays. Then you had Cardwell with 16 minutes, 8 points, 7 rebounds, 3 blocks, had a great chase down block, had some great offensive rebounds, was all over the place in his minutes. And that's what you want to see from him. Like all over the place in a good way. Sometimes that can be seen in a bad way, but it was very much in a good way. He was doing a little bit of everything. And he was showing that touch around the rim as well with a nice offensive rebound into a jump hook. And he went 2 for 4 from the free throw line. You know, we'll take that 50%. That's fine. As long as it's 50% or above with him from the free throw line, I think we'll take it. Then the last guy is Dario Saric, who somehow had 10 minutes and like didn't do anything. That was weird that he even got minutes, but I mean, someone's got to play the 4, I guess. So, sure. On the other side, it was Denny Avdia with the 35 points, and Shaedon Sharpe with 20 points in the first half, ended with 26 on the game. And then Jeremy Grant getting 20 points. So unsurprisingly, I mean, the Blazers are just a massive team compared to the Kings. Their starting lineup is Shaedon Sharpe, Denny Avdia, Toumani Camara, Jeremy Grant, and Donovan Clingan. That's hilarious when you compare it to the Kings lineup. And then off the bench, their guys with the most minutes are Chris Murray, Robert Williams, Sidy Cissoko. I mean, Sidy Cissoko is like the smallest guy that's getting over 10 minutes. And former King, Kings legend, Sidy Cissoko, is a wing that the Kings could use right now. But the Kings have a chance to get their revenge on the Blazers as they play them on Saturday. The next game is against the Blazers this time. With the Kings being at home, maybe they can get some hometown officiating, just like the Blazers did in this one. I'm just interested to see what's going on with Malik Monk. Is he going to play? Why is he getting a DNP? I mean, I think he's probably going to get traded at the trade deadline just because he's someone who has value, probably. But for him to get a DNP with no injury is very weird, even though I understand where he's coming from because it's like too many guard minutes. I get it. I just didn't think he would be the guy to get the DNP. I've been complaining about Keon Ellis getting not enough minutes and wanting more minutes for Neat Clifford, so I can't really be mad at the coaching staff for DNPing Malik Monk and doing what I wanted them to do. But that doesn't make it any less weird. I think the main difference that we could see coming in this game is if the Kings, well, first of all, if someone gets healthy like a Zach LaVine, but Zach LaVine's not going to be playing. Or if we see a starting lineup change, like Keon Ellis getting into the starting lineup, possibly, over a Precious Achiuwa, and then Precious taking Dario Saric's minutes off the bench, maybe then you free up some minutes for Malik Monk off the bench. But yeah, it's a weird one. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Saturday to recap that next game against the Blazers, so I'll see you guys then. Peace.